Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Alright, so today inshallah we are continuing with the explanation of the Jannah, its descriptions. And last time I think we stopped at, we were talking about the soil, is that right? The turba, which is the soil or the sand of the Jannah. And we described what it is. Today inshallah we're going to go quickly over the the rivers in Jannah, the springs, the trees, and then even some of the palaces and the tents that are in Jannah. And then maybe also to kind of talk about the fragrance. What else? And then talking about the really what does it take to get to Jannah, and some of the plantations in it. So we'll start today inshallah with what is called Anhar al-Jannah. And we know that a lot of times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about Jannah, one of the clear things He mentions is its rivers. So for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in Surah Al-Baqarah, when He says, وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ. Right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, give glad tidings to those who believe and they performed righteous deeds, that for them there are gardens with rivers, right? تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا, from underneath which rivers flow. So definitely there are rivers, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had talked to them in several places, but the Prophet ﷺ went a bit more of description regarding those rivers. And so one of the things, for example, he would mention is in his trip in Isra and Mi'raj, in the number of rivers that he's seen in Jannah. But also one hadith kind of talks about all these rivers, essentially because any body of water needs to flow from one direction to another. And so essentially these rivers, they flow from the highest level in Jannah, going downwards. And this is when the Prophet ﷺ, we know this from Sahih al-Bukhari, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُ اللَّهَ فَاسْأَلُوا الْفِرْدَوْسِ. If you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, referring to the Jannah, if you ask Him, then ask Him for the Firdaus. فَإِنَّهُ أَوْسَطِ الْجَنَّةِ, it's in the middle of the Jannah, وَأَعْلَى الْجَنَّةِ, and it's the highest part of Jannah. So it's in the highest central region of Jannah. And then he said, أَرَاهُ فَوْقَ عَرْشِهِ أَرَاهُ فَوْقَ عَرْشِ الرَّحْمَنِ وَمِنْهُ تَفَجَّرُ أَنْهَارُ الْجَنَّةِ. And so from al-Firdaus, the rivers of Jannah, they explode and they flow. So we know where it's coming from, the source essentially. But we even know that there are certain names for certain rivers or bodies of water. And so one of the hadiths in Sahih al-Bukhari, when the Prophet ﷺ was talking about his journey during the Mi'raj, when he went to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he went and took a peek in Jannah and a few other areas, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, رُفِعَتْ لِي السِّدْرَةِ. Right? So the sidra, which is the name of a tree we're going to talk about later on inshallah, has been elevated to him. فَإِذَا أَرْبَعْتُ أَنْهَارٍ. Right? So he saw 4 rivers. In another narration, 4 rivers too, but he said specifically 2 coming from its source, from that sidra. So he said, فَإِذَا أَرْبَعَتْ أَنْهَارٍ. There are 4 rivers. نهران ظاهران ونهران باطنان. So 2 rivers are visible, the other 2 are hidden. فأما الظاهران, the 2 ones that are visible, فالنيل والفرات. And Nil is obviously Nile, and the Furat is the Euphrates. وأما الباطن, the ones that are hidden, فنهران في الجنة. 2 rivers that will remain in Jannah. In another narration, Sahih Muslim, Abu Hurairah said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he's now mentioning specific rivers, he said, سيحان وجيحان والفرات والنيل كل من أنهار الجنة. So he said Sihan, which is, I think it's also called Sir Darya, right? And Jihan, which is called Amu Darya, and it's in Central Asia. Like we're talking about Central Asia. Yeah, I guess Central Asia. So the area of Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, all these areas, Uzbekistan, they kind of almost flow like this through them. And there are 2 rivers that exist, obviously, and we all know the Nile and the Euphrates.
The name Spanish,
Darya is in both of them, right? Darya, which means water or river, right? D-A-R-Y-A, Darya. And the first one, which is Sihan, is Sir, right? S-Y-R, Sir, Darya. And Jihan is Amu, A-M-U, Darya. If you Google that, you'll see it on a map. Both of them, they're kind of close to each other, kind of go like that. Alright, so here's a question though. What does it mean when the Prophet ﷺ is saying that, okay, Sihan, Wajihan, and Furat, and Nil, they are from the rivers of Jannah? The Nile and Euphrates, and Sihan and Jihan, the rivers from Jannah. What does that mean? Because obviously they're on earth. Is that right? Yes?
Maybe the way these rivers, mashallah, flow from like the north to the east and give all these good to all these people and all these countries, the rivers of Jannah will provide the good as a sea. One of the, maybe.
It's an interesting interpretation. Anything else? I think I like that interpretation. I think that might be one of the interpretations, in terms of the way they kind of extinguish thirst, and how their purity and their taste, and how they bring life to the earth. Similar, there are things like that in Jannah, but obviously with the qualities of Jannah. So that could be interpretation, but it's not the most common. Anything else?
Also that Allah put some from the Jannah on earth in different ways to make it easy for us to just have the picture in our mind, I think.
No, but he specifically named the names now. He said the Nile, the Euphrates, like Jihan and Sayhan, are from Jannah.
They never go dry?
Well, he said they're from Jannah, so what does it have to do with not going dry?
Giving out.
طيب, anything else?
Any spiritual?
Okay, there's two interpretations. It's the same as asking, where did the humans originate from? Where did they originate from? Jannah, right? Adam was from Jannah, but then he was placed on the earth. Same thing, okay? The black stone of the Kaaba, where is it from? Jannah, but it was placed on the earth. That's one interpretation, that it originates from Jannah.
The origin of everything.
And well, it originated from Jannah, came out from Jannah, and it was placed on earth. Okay, and so its original source is still there. The other interpretation is that these rivers will be, on the Day of Judgment, will be taken and placed in Jannah. That's the other interpretation. But I personally, I think I like the other one, like the first interpretation. But anything that gets brought from Jannah to the earth obviously changes its qualities. So similar how the black stone, when it was first came down, it was white, and however the evil of the man, what he has performed, had darkened it because it darkened from sin. And so the qualities of anything that comes out of Jannah into the earth will change. And so the qualities of these rivers obviously have changed. It becomes more worldly, but in the hereafter, in Jannah they have the same ones, but obviously different qualities. So that's one of the other two interpretations. Now from the other rivers, now there are other rivers in Jannah. Most of you should know this one. Come on, what's another river in Jannah? Okay, good. Actually, different types. Good. There's rivers from water, right? Rivers from milk, rivers from honey, and rivers from. I don't know why. Okay, Khamr is a bit more general, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, مثل الجنة التي وعد المتقون فيها أنهار من ماء غير آسن وأنهار من لبن لم يتغير طعمه وأنهار من خمر لذة للشاربين وأنهار من عسل مصفى. So he mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he mentioned 4 different types of rivers. So a river from water. However, he said, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, غير آسن. Asin is, you know when you leave water out for too long, for a period of time, what happens to it? It changes in
the color and the
taste, smell, right? Sometimes they have this old kind of like, water, stagnant water taste. Good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this never happens, right? غير آسن, right? It does not change. So it's neither its fragrances, it's always pure in its purest of forms. And so that's غير آسن وأنهار من ماء غير آسن في أنهار من غير آسن وأنهار من لبن لم يتغير طعمه, and rivers from milk that flow that its taste has not changed, because the milk naturally will change its taste. It will go bad, right? It will spoil. But this thing doesn't happen. And then he said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, وَأَنْهَارٌ مِّن خَمْرٍ لَذَّةٍ لِلشَّارِبِينَ Rivers from, I know they use khamr, and sometimes I know they translate it as wine, but I don't know, khamr is a bit more general. لَذَّةٍ لِلشَّارِبِينَ, which means that when they drink it, it doesn't have any sort of the side effects or the foul smell or sometimes the bitter taste that is experienced with the people who drink it in this world. But you have to understand also that this is a reward for people in Jannah for listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who drink alcohol in this world will be deprived from it in the hereafter. Okay? Because this is something of a delayed reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders not to indulge in it, because if it's negative impacts, repercussions, and so forth, even if it's just a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an order, if we indulge in it, then unless we repent, then we are deprived from it on the Day of Judgment. And then the last one is وَأَنْهَارٌ مِّنْ عَسَلٍ مُصَفًّى, rivers from honey that doesn't have any impurities in it. Because any honey, usually the honey that when you gather it, there's always some sort of an impurity in it, but this one has no impurities in it. But one thing we have to understand also is that all that the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are talking about is not exactly what we experience and we see in the world. The only link between them is just the name. And it's done that way so that we would have some sort of a visualization of what is possibly waiting for us. But even then, it's not truly how it is.
The milk is not really milk, right?
It's completely, the whiteness is obviously different, the taste is obviously different, but we understand what milk is. The concept of milk we understand. The concept of honey is something that is sweet, we understand. But the reality of it is not like the one we have here. All right, give me another, what other rivers are in Jannah?
Honey, milk.
Okay, we mentioned those four.
Yeah.
And then we mentioned Nil, Furat, Jihan, and Sihan. Anything else? This is very important, you can't forget this one. Inna a'tainaka
Kawthar.
Kawthar. Come on, guys.
I said that before.
You did? You whispered it. All right. Al-Kawthar. Right, so Al-Kawthar is from the rivers of Jannah. We obviously know this. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, in the Sahih Bukhari, Anas ibn Malik, he said, the Prophet said, like, بينما أنا أسير في الجنة, while walking in Jannah, إذا أنا بنهر حفته قباب الدر. On the edges, there are qibab, which means like, the rounded pearls. Al-mujawwaf, which means they're hollow. قلت ما هذا يا جبريل? He asked Jibreel, what is this? He said, قال هذا الكوثر الذي أعطاك ربك. This is the Kawthar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given for you. فإذا طيبه أو طينه مسك أذفر. Its soil is made out of pure musk. And we talked about the soil of Jannah before. So now we have all these rivers. Alright, so that's regarding levels. Now, when we talk about rivers, it's not the only bodies of water, but there's also springs. And subhanAllah, it's our inclination, by the way, to enjoy, for some odd reason, large bodies of water. We find it very soothing. For us, it's a source of nourishment, refreshment, coolness. We tend to enjoy, even our idea of sometimes a vacation is to go some sort of a body of water. Even some people they will even just sit there by the shores. But we seem to enjoy that. In Jannah, there's also springs. So some of the springs of Jannah have been talked about. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ, right? The muttaqeen, those who have taqwa, they have jannat, which is gardens, wa'uyun, and springs. So there are springs that are before them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, in I think it's Surah Al-Rahman, it is Surah Al-Rahman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ تَجْرِيَانِ. In the other verse, فِيهِمَا عَيْنَانِ نَضَّاخَتَانِ. Okay, so there is a difference between tajriyan and naddakhatan because they're different levels. In the higher level, it is tajriyan, which is stronger. It's like, just flowing. Naddakhatan, which means they are springing out, which is a bit less than the complete flow. So naddakha is less than tajri. And so there is a different rank. So based on the ranks in Jannah, obviously the springs and wells and river will differ from one level to the other. So the higher you go up, the better it is. Now there are different names for the springs that are excellent. One of them is Salsabil. So I'm going to mention three. One of them is salsabil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يسقون فيها كأسا كان مزاجها زنجبيلا عينا فيها تسمى سلسبيلا. Right? عينا, a spring that is called salsabil. And so even Ikrimah, he said that salsabil ism ayn fil Jannah. It's his name of a spring, a well in Jannah. This one is actually special. This spring is the one that you know how we talked about the people who will enter Jannah? We said there's the first wave of people who will enter Jannah. This is the spring for them. Right, so Awal Zumra, those who will enter Jannah, the first wave that will enter Jannah, as mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, when one of the Bani Israel, one of the Jews, had asked the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, فَمَنْ أَوَّلُ إِجَازَةً, who are those who will cross, like, you know, to the other side and enter Jannah? The Prophet ﷺ said, فُقَرَاء الْمُهَاجِرِينَ, the ones from the Muhajirin who are poor. And then he said, فَمَا تُحْفَتُهُمْ حِينَ يَدْخُلُونَ, what is their prize, like the most, like, prize of what they're going to eat? So Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, زِيَادَةُ كَبِدِ النُّون. Ziyada, which kabid is talking about the liver, and noon is a fish. Ziyada is that external, like, you know, the extra part in the liver that you see. This is what they're going to eat. This is, like, you know, the best of the most of types of food in Jannah. This is what they're going to eat. And then he said, like, you know, the person asked him, he said, فَمَا غِذَاؤُهُمْ, right, what is their sustenance? And noon is al-hut, yes, which is the fish. He said, what is their sustenance? He said, it will be butchered for them, ثَوْرُ الْجَنَّةِ, right, the bull of the Jannah that grazes around in the front. So he's eating from the grazing of the Jannah, that will be butchered for them to eat from his meat. And then he asked, what are they going to drink from? He said, عَيْنٍ فِيهَا تُسَمَّى سَلْسَبِيلًا, right, تُسَمَّى السَّلْسَبِيل, or سَلْسَبِيلًا, which means that this is for people, like, you know, for them specifically. Now the other name, another name for one of the wells or springs in Jannah is Zanjabil. So Zanjabil in English is what? Ginger. Now obviously it's not the ginger that we are used to, but it's a well from, it's called Zanjabil. Zanjabil is one of the springs in Jannah. And it's for the ones who are, so this one in its pure form is for the muqarrabin, ones who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For everybody else, it's mixed for them with something else. So remember we said it's for levels? It's levels of, for example, gold has levels of purity. The richest get what kind of purity? Because they can afford it, right? Or even diamonds, they're different classes. The rich ones, they can get the higher class. The other ones, we have impurities. But in Jannah, obviously, there is no impurities. The way it doesn't come in its pure form is that it's mixed from something else in Jannah. So it's still beautiful, but it's still not, it's in the pure form. So Zanjabil, for the ones who are close, and Imam al-Tabari, he mentioned this from the explanation of Qatada. So he says, رَقِيقَ يَشْرَبُهَا الْمُقَرَّبُونَ صُرْفًا. So this water well, the people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, muqarrabun, the ones who hastened, the first levels, they drink it in its pure form. For everybody else, it's mixed for them. The last one is tasneem. So we have salsabil, zanjabil, and tasneem. Now many people name their daughters tasneem, okay? Some name their daughters salsabil. I don't think I've ever seen a person name his daughter zanjabil, because it's just, well, in English, I guess, ginger. Not really. It is, some people name ginger, right? No? Okay, never mind. But salsabil and like, you know, we hear tasneem, zanjabil, but tasneem is a name. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so this is in Mutaffifin. يسقون من رحيق مختوم ختامه مسك. No, يسقون ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون ومزاجه من تسنيم, right, عينا يشرب بها المقربون, right, ومزاجه من تسنيم عينا يشرب بها المقربون. So ومزاجه من تسنيم, which means that this rahiq is, by the way, is a name for wine, okay, a name for wine. Rahiq is a wine. ومزاجه, which means it will be mixed with it from this rahiq, from tasneem. So tasneem will be mixed into it. So this is the well with which they will be mixed with other stuff, and so it's called tasneem. And it's, by the way, it's considered one of the most noble drinks. That well is from one of the most milk and one of the highest ranks in Jannah. Dhahak, he said, like, مزاجه من تسنيم عينا يشرب بها المقربون. So المقربون also will drink from it in its pure form. They'll, like, from tasneem they'll drink from it, but the others will be mixed with other things too. So if you notice, once again, we are differentiating between the ranks of Muslims in Jannah, because we have to admit, in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just, and subhanahu wa ta'ala will never ever reward those who have strived the most, similar to those who have strived half and half, those who have strived very few, and those who did not strive at all. Even though they're Muslims, they did not strive, they'll still enter Jannah, but whatever they're going to be experiencing is different than those who are in the uppermost levels, the ones who exerted more effort, the ones who wanted to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more, because that makes more sense. Because otherwise, why should we even strive in the first place? Right? It makes no sense. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had placed these different rankings, but also to encourage us. This is what's awaiting my beloved servant in the Day of Judgment. All right, now we're talking about here next, because we're talking about the rivers and we talked about the wells, we're going to talk about the dwellings. So dwellings, which is the housings that are for the... I said four, no, I said three. Did I say four? Three. So what are they again? Tasneem, Salsabil, and Zanjabil. So in terms of housings, what's there? So these are the housings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously, He built houses for us. And they're obviously, like, they're beautiful. They're most perfect of houses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Masakin طيبة في جنات عدن," right? Masakin, which means housings, where you're going to reside in. Residences. طيبة, which means what? Good, pure, not kind. Good, pure. في جنات عدن, in jannat that are meant to be everlasting. So also their descriptions, we can read, no matter how much we can describe it, it's still, when we see the reality, it's completely different. But still, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a glimpse so we can a little bit try to comprehend what's in it. Because once again, the descriptions are not as, like, you see it and experience it. So I know sometimes, okay, so I'm going to mention this. So there are obviously palaces and there are tents, but then there's also sometimes mentions of ghuraf, chambers. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, after He mentioned, in some verses, He says, وَهُمْ فِي الْغُرَفَاتِ آمِنُونَ, and they are in the chambers, they are secure. And another verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ يُجْزَوْنَ الْغُرْفَةَ بِمَا صَبَرُوا وَيُلَقَّوْنَ فِيهَا تَحِيَّةً وَسَلَامًا. أُولَٰئِكَ يُجْزَوْنَ, they will be rewarded with the chambers. Why? Because they were patient. بِمَا صَبَرُوا, in words for their patience. وَيُلَقَّوْنَ فِيهَا تَحِيَّةً, it will be given to them, upon them, placed upon them, تَحِيَّة, which means God tidings, or the greetings. وَسَلَامًا, and salam, which means the absence of any defects. Okay. So over here it's called chambers. So is there a difference between chambers in the palaces and the tents? The scholars tell you that the chambers are referring to the palaces. Chambers are referring to the palaces because they come also in different levels. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَكِنْ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا رَبَّهُمْ لَهُمْ غُرَفٌ مِّن فَوْقِهَا غُرَفٌ مَبْنِيَّةٌ. So Ibn Kathir, when he was talking about this, he said, when he's talking about chambers above chambers for people who have taqwa, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had informed that for His pious slaves, that they have chambers in Jannah, and it is the palaces, right? The huge palaces. This is why He said rooms above rooms that are built. So one level above the other. And palaces, they're never in one level, they're usually multiple levels. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ kind of described them interesting, because just to tell you how, they're not exactly what we're accustomed to. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna fil Jannah," that in Jannah there are ghurafan yura zahiruha min batinaha wa batinaha min zahiraha. Right? There are chambers, in Jannah, that you see its interior from its exterior, and the exterior from its interior. So one can say that it's made out of glass, right?
That makes sense.
Which makes sense. But it's talking about because of its beauty, right? That it shines through everything. But also outside is beautiful. Allah A'lam, like, the true intention behind the meaning. There's different intent, like, perhaps maybe different interpretations, but we can't really comprehend this until we see it. And then subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ said, who is this is built for? He said, لِمَنْ أَطْعَمَ الطَّعَامِ وَأَلَانَ الكَّلَامِ وَتَابَعَ الصِّيَامِ وَصَلَّ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسِ نِيَامِ. So he said these chambers are for those who feed the food, so which means that they feed those who need the food. وَأَلَانَ الكَّلَامِ, which means that they are lenient in their speech. They're not foul, they're not aggressive, or any of these things. They're lenient in speech. وَتَابَعَ الصِّيَامِ, and they follow in their fasting, referring also to the non-obligatory fast. وَصَلَّ بِاللَّيْلِ, and they prayed at night when people are asleep. So this is essentially a very high rank, a very high status of these chambers we're talking about that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for it. And those are prepared for those who have prepared for it. So Allah prepared it for those who have prepared for it. And the way we prepare for it is by doing what? Performing righteous deeds. Because we have to realize that when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us something, and then we do nothing for it, what are we doing? We're dreaming. This is just like, empty, wishful thinking. Because even in the world that we live in, a person that says, I want to be rich, and doesn't work for it, what do we say about them? Besides being lazy and bums and fool. Empty, wishful thinking. If you want something, you have to do something. Right? You want the big house, you work for the big house. You want a good reputation, you work for that good reputation. You stay away from anything that taints it. Similarly, when we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us with Jannah and then sit back and do nothing, it's not gonna happen. Yes, it might eventually happen, but maybe after we are, unfortunately, might be punished with all these things which we don't want to experience. But in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us. So this, if we ask for the highest of levels, we have to work for it. And so this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, it is for those who feed the food, who pray at night when people are sleeping, who follow in fasting. Those are people who are not indulging in the worldly desires. Meaning not indulging means it doesn't distract them. Obviously we have to indulge because we have to eat and drink and we live with our families and we need shelter. But we're talking about indulgence that it doesn't distract them from their end goal. It doesn't distract them from their real mission. It doesn't distract them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because once this distraction occurs, then we are not really focusing on the hereafter. Then Allah is the last thing we think about. The only thing we start thinking about is our desires. That's it, period. What am I going to eat? Who am I going to accompany? I want to fulfill anything that makes me happy, and that's it. How am I going to fulfill it? If I need to steal and cheat, whatever the case is, right? Because now we're just indulge in this. We're so distracted by it, we forget everything else. And so we're busy building this world, and we forget to build the hereafter. Right? This is the consequence. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying the description of those people, if you notice, the people who feed, a person who feeds food, quite often does it, and they are lenient in their speech, and they fast. They're not really attached to this world very much. Yes, of course, they live in it, they use it, they need, they eat while they need to eat so they can be able to have the strength to fast. They sleep when they need to sleep so they can make the tahajjud, and they even work so they maybe perhaps make money to provide for others that they might need it, and so forth. Yes. Yes, the barrier, which is you kind of go beyond the barrier. All right, now when we talk about the tents, so the tents that we talk about, I haven't described the palaces yet, but we're going to start with describing the tents. So the tents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we know there's tents because Allah mentioned in the Quran, right? When He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَحُورٌ مَقْصُورَاتٌ فِي الْخِيَامِ, hur that are confined to the tents. Now these tents are not like our regular tents. We think of tents as poles and pieces of cloth. We can bring large ones, but we need poles in them and so forth. These tents are different. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-khayma durratun mujawwafa. Right, so this khayma is durra, which means it's made out of pearl that is hollow. Okay? So there is nothing holding up. It is just a huge hollow pearl. He said, طولها في السماء 30 ميلا. Its elevation in the sky is 30 miles. In another narration, its width is another 30 miles. Do you guys ever seen a tent like that? Ever seen a house like that? Probably not, right? So this is the tent. This is the smaller one. We haven't talked about the palaces yet. So this is just a tent. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a hadith, like, he would have a family in one end and a family in another end. This end does not see the other end, which makes sense. We're talking about 30 miles apart, okay, in the different corners. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he said, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned this in two different hadith. One is in Sahih Bukhari and the other one is in Muslim, about regarding its length and its height and what it looks like. Now in terms of the palace, the Prophet ﷺ, he told us about some of the descriptions of the palaces in Jannah for his wives, for example, or some of his companions. So the famous hadith when Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ when he was sitting with Khadija, right? And he said, this is Khadija. Jibreel is telling to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, this is Khadija coming forth. She has with her a ina, right? Ina fihi idam. Idam, like, it's something that you kind of eat with bread. Idam ta'. She has a plate, coming a plate. فإذا أتتك, if she comes, فقر عليها السلام من ربها ومني, then recite to her or give her salam from me and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Actually, I should be truthful to the translation. Give her salam from Allah and from me. So Jibreel is saying, give Khadija salam from Allah and from me, and give her the glad tidings with a house in Jannah min qasab. La sakhab fihi wa la nasab. Right? So the qasab, what's qasab over here? So it's not sugar cane? Qasab. Some people say it's sugar cane, right? No, qasab over here is a pearl. Okay? It's referring to a pearl. Qasab over here is a pearl. So murad bil lu'lu'a mujawwafa wasi'a, right? So it is a pearl that is very hollow and huge. So this is bigger than these tents that we're talking about. It's huge. So he said, give her glad tidings of a Jannah, a house in Jannah that's made from qasab. La sakhaba fihi wa la nasab. In it there is no sakhab, which means loud noise, screaming. Wa la nasab, which means there is no. It is translated as ta'ab wa ana, difficulty. There's no there's no difficulty or hardship. Okay, there's no difficulty or hardship in it. But even the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned also when he was walking in Jannah, in Isra al-Mi'raj, if I remember correctly, or I think it might have been one of his visions, I can't remember specifically, when he said, دخلت الجنة فإذا أنا بالرميصاء. So he said, I saw a Rumaysa, which is a woman, she's the wife of Abu Talha. And I heard a sound, فقلت من هذا? He said, who's that? Jibreel said, this is Bilal. So now we know that Bilal is in Jannah. And then I said, the Prophet said, رأيت وَرَأَيْتُ قَصْرًا بِفِنَائِهِ جَارِيَةً. I saw a palace, in its courtyard there is a female. And another narration, she was making wudu. And so the Prophet stopped and asked her, who does this palace belong to? So she said, it is for Umar ibn Khattab. And so the Prophet ﷺ wanted to look into it, but then he said, فَذَكَرْتُ غَيْرَتَكَ يَا عُمَرَ. But I remembered your jealousy, Umar. Because a palace, right, when you enter a palace, it has the belongings of a person, and maybe his wives, his daughters, or something like that. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I remembered your jealousy. And so Umar al-Khattab, when he heard that, he said, I would defend you, O Messenger of Allah. I would sacrifice my mother and father for you. Would I be jealous from you? Right? But this tells you also the level of respect that the Prophet ﷺ has. All right, now the question is, okay, if there's palaces and all these things, how do we attain them? How do you attain these palaces? Yusuf, you want a palace in Jannah?
Yeah.
How do you get one?
I guess I follow what Allah gave to us at the Quran.
Then we'll all have palaces.
Yeah.
Is that easy?
No.
No, I said that's how easy it is, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And is it easy then?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Some of the ways, because it's so many, mashallah, Allah is so generous and He made it so easy with so many good deeds. like praying the 12 rak'ah every day.
Good, excellent. That's one of the ways. Okay, one of the ways is praying 12 rak'ahs of sunnah other than the 5 daily prayers. So these are, okay, never mind. Okay, because we're studying Hanbali fiqh later on. So in the Hanbali school of thought, those 12 rak'ahs are different than the rawatib. So the rawatib is 10. You're going to add to that those 12 rak'ahs. However, because we know you can combine intentions, you can combine the intention that these are the 12 rak'ahs, plus those are the rawatib, but you're just going to have to pray 2 rak'ahs extra for dhuhr. So those 12 are the 2 before Fajr, and then 4 before dhuhr, 2 after dhuhr, 2 after maghrib, and 2 after Isha. So the total is 12. But in the Hanbali school of thought, those are different than the rawatib. So you can actually end up praying 22 if you want, but you can, because if you combine intentions, you can still do just 12 and get rewarded for the rawatib and be rewarded for the other 12 rak'ahs.
Which one are the wajib then?
There's no wajib. These are all sunnah.
All sunnah?
Yeah, these are all sunnah.
Well, if I say Ayatul Kursi after the salah, also there is nothing between him and Jannah?
No, that's between the doors of Jannah, but we're not talking about how you're going to get those palaces. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said in hadith, he said, "Man salla fil yawmi wal layla 12 rak'ah tatawwu'an bana Allahu lahu baytan fil jannah." So whomever voluntarily prays 12 rak'ahs during the day and the night, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for him a house in Jannah. That's one way to do it. Give me a second way. Say what? Yes?
At least
What did you say? Surah what? Yeah, it's called what? Surah? Ikhlas. Sheikh, I think you need to come up here to kind of correct it. Surah Al-Ikhlas, right? So if you said Qul Huwallahu Ahad, so this is an Mu'adh ibn Anas al-Juhani, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man qara'a Qul Huwallahu Ahad," whomever recites Qul Huwallahu Ahad, hatta yakhtimha 10 marat, until he ends it 10 times, بَنَى اللَّهُ لَهُ قَصْرًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for him a palace in Jannah. And this is narrated by, yes, and this is narrated by Imam Ahmed and others. Okay, narrated by Imam Ahmed and others. All right, one last thing we're going to mention. Yes?
Isn't it if you leave an argument, there's a hadith that if you leave an argument, even if you're like correct.
Good, excellent. Right? The hadith was أَنَا زَعِيمٌ بِبَيْتٍ في ربض الجنة لمن ترك المراء ولو كان صادقا وببيت في وسط الجنة لمن. Come on. طب what's the highest? وبيت في أعلى الجنة لمن حسن خلقه. Right? So those are 3 different ways. So he said, I'll build a house in the outskirts, in the middle, and in the high peak. He said, for the outskirts who leave arguments, even if they are correct.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
So you leave the argument, even if I think I'm right.
Yes.
And I'll get a place.
No, we're talking about useless arguments.
Yeah.
Not arguments, for example, to establish the truthfulness of Islam to a non-Muslim. Right? We're talking about arguments, right? Like, you took my phone. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, and then you start arguing, right? Just useless arguments. Just leave it behind.
So if you leave multiple,
yes.
so
Right?
if you leave multiple arguments, you get multiple houses?
I hope so, inshallah.
How many houses do you need though, Jannah?
Why would you want to limit yourself? But there is, okay, so here's the thing. It's not, so the hadith that if whoever prays 12 rak'ahs during the day and the night, a palace is built for him, the question is if he does it once or continuously. Right, this is a palace in Jannah, then most likely, Wallahu A'lam, many of the scholars will say continuously. And so also, it becomes a habit for you that you leave argument. Yes, you might fall in it once or twice, but your habit is leaving it. The other one, the house in the middle of Jannah, is for the one who, sorry, no, wait a second. Oh yes, no, sorry. The one in the is it the one in the middle or the outskirts? Now I'm confused. There's one who leaves lying even jokingly. Now I can't remember if that's in the outskirts or the one in the middle.
Sorry,
I think that's the one in the outskirts. Sorry, the one in the outskirts. The one in the outskirts of Jannah is whomever leaves lying even jokingly. So do not lie whatsoever, even if you're joking. And the one in the middle of Jannah for the one who leaves argument, even if he's correct. And the one in the highest level is if he, his manners, he's perfected, he has like, hasuna khuluqu, which means his manners and etiquettes are perfected. Because those are difficult. All 3 are difficult, by the way. They're not easy. All right, one more.
Sorry, all these things were basically
A house.
right?
Yes, habits.
But habits. I mean, you can miss once in a while by mistake, whatever it is. But
Okay.
like,
It's very normal for you. You have habits of doing certain things, right? Don't you miss them every once in a while? It happens. Okay?
but that doesn't mean you lose it.
Inshallah not. Because you go back to your habit or you rectify what you have missed. Okay. So last one we're going to mention, how to build a house in Jannah. And it's that you build a house for Allah. What are we talking about?
Masjid.
Masjid. Right? Whomever builds a masjid for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whomever builds a masjid desiring the face of Allah, the word of Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build one like it for him in Jannah. So those are several ways we can attain that.
Islamic school, right? That's not counted.
No, an Islamic school is not a masjid.
No, I'm saying if you build Islamic school, will that mean?
May Allah reward you.
Yeah.
But based on this hadith, I can't say yes or no.
Yeah.
That's hasanat only.
Allahu a'lam, ya Shaykh. Okay, so these are things in the unseen. Okay, I cannot say yes or no. But I can tell you, if for a masjid to build a house in Jannah, if you build a masjid, then yes. Now, if you can, obviously this is referring spending your entire, you yourself building a masjid. But what if I only build a part of it? Then you also have a part in that in Jannah. Yeah. Okay, so here's another question. How would, obviously, inshallah, may Allah reward us with many multiple palaces in Jannah. Ameen. Ahmed, ameen, ya Shaykh. Okay, alhamdulillah. How would we know them? How would we know them?
What is it?
Once we enter Jannah, inshallah, we don't have GPS, do we?
How to get there?
How do you get there? How do you know them? How do you know your house?
Just will take us.
And they will call us. It will be.
No and no.
No one will. Oh. They just won't call us.
The Prophet ﷺ said that, it's in a hadith. He said, إِذَا خَلَصَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ مِنَ النَّارِ, that if once the believers, they, alhamdulillah, the khalasa, which means they're secured and safe from the hellfire. وَحَوْزِ بِقَنْطَارٍ. On the end of the hadith, he said, once they enter Jannah, when they're permitted to enter Jannah, he said, فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسِ مُحَمَّدٍ, he swears by whom the soul of Muhammad is in his hand, لَأَحَدُهُمْ بِمَسْكَنِهِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ أَدْرَى بِمَنْزِلِهِ مَا كَانَ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Right? So he says that one of the people who enter Jannah will know his house where it is more than he knows where his house is in this world. Nobody needs to give you directions to your house. Is that right? Sometimes even when you're not thinking, like you want to go with your car somewhere and all of a sudden because you're kind of daydreaming, you find out you're making turns, all of a sudden you're back at home, right? We made a wrong turn, you're back, you're like, oh wait a second, I'm supposed to go to Walmart or something. You just automatically, you just know where you're going. Similarly, on the Day of Judgment, once you enter Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it that you know your palace more than we know where your location of your house is. Okay, so you don't need an angel, you don't need a GPS or anything like that. So this is referring to the Jannah. Alright, now Jannah, obviously, because it's Jannah, it's not dark. Is it dark? There's light. So what is that source of light? The moon and the sun, right? No.
Nur.
The what? Nur means light.
A lamp with the olive oil.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Because somewhere I like there will be a light with that.
Alright, there is light, obviously, but it's like, there is no day and night, by the way, in Jannah. In Jannah, there is no day and night, and so there is really no moon or sun. Its light is always there, right? Nuruhu da'im. The only way we figure out, the time span of a night or a day is by the, the shades being brought down or being brought up. That's the only way we find out. And when the doors are open and the doors are closed, so they're open during the day, they're closed during the night. And this is what the scholars had mentioned. Ibn al-Faraj ibn al-Jawzi, he mentioned that. Ibn Kathir, he had mentioned that. But what is really the source? Allah alam. Okay.
It's all purpose and
I'm not going to be very picky. I'm going to be happy anyway.
So your state of mind, right? It's in a different dimension, right? I mean, there is a sense of feeling accomplished or...
Would you sleep in Jannah?
I'm sorry?
Will you be sleeping in Jannah? Sleep.
No.
no,
Why not?
no need for it. There is no efforts, no time.
What if you want? Why would you want to sleep? Would you get tired in Jannah?
What if you like tired? What if you want?
It's only not.
But here's the thing. Why do you get tired?
Because you do a lot of activity.
Because you get bored.
No.
طيب. But in Jannah, you're not in that physical form.
But what if you like to sleep and you really want to sleep?
Then I guess you can have what you want. But here's the funny thing about sleep. It deprives you, it's a momentary, no, not momentary death. That's not what I'm looking for. A momentary ceasing of enjoyment.
Yes, exactly.
Because when you're sleeping, you don't feel anything, do you? You don't even enjoy anything because you're sleeping. It's absence of everything. Well, not everything, but.
You always don't go.
So when you say I enjoy sleeping, you're saying you're enjoying because you feel rested when you wake up.
Yeah.
So you really don't enjoy sleep. You enjoy the feeling once you wake up. But you don't need, but in Jannah, you don't need that. You don't need the sleep to have that feeling. In fact, sleep is really a deprivation of the enjoyment of Jannah, because you're not experiencing anything in that time period. So there is no need for sleep. Because if you're excited, like, when you're happy with something and there's enjoyment above enjoyment above enjoyment, like, you think of yourself in a place where you're excited about it, would you want to sleep?
No.
You just got there, right? Would you want to sleep? Most likely not. Sorry? Eternity. Ah, you get bored because you're thinking of consistency. We talked about this before. The pleasure in Jannah, think of a fruit, okay? When you eat what fruit do you guys like? Do you even like fruits? Apple, okay. Apple. The best bite is the first bite. Is that right? No? No. I'm talking about you. That first bite, when you bite in it, is it more enjoyable or that last? The first one, because by the last one, you're like, oh, I got used to it. This is kind of nice. I'm going to just finish it, right? In Jannah, it's different. In Jannah, that first bite that you take is beautiful. The second bite is even better. The third is even better. And the fourth is even better, because I want you to move your thought process from worldly imagining things to the hereafter, where everything is just different. So the enjoyment is always increasing, because you have to remember, talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has the ability to do that. That enjoyment one after the next, that first second, right? The second is much better than the first. The second second is better than the first, and so on, continue. So there's no room for you getting bored. And there's so much to do that you can never be bored. Nah? You don't have to, but if you want to, you can eat, because you enjoy food. Do you want another one? You'll get another one. Is that right?
See, we are human beings, we cannot understand. So these are also.
No, we have to stop thinking of Jannah as the worldly aspect of things. Because the world is meant to be built this way. Because it's meant for the enjoyment to be transient. That everything will end, even your enjoyment. You get bored. Okay, this is fun, then after a while you're bored. Everything will end. It's built this way. Jannah, it's built for everything to last. It's the opposite. Right? The enjoyment to last. Right? Whatever you're going to experience in there, to last. It'll be even always better. Okay? Alright. Jannah also has a fragrance. There's a rih in it, fragrance. And it's a very beautiful smell. And in fact, based on narrations, that the fragrance can be, there's different narrations, they can be experienced from quite a distance. However, the narrations, they come in different distances. So for example, one narration, the Prophet said, وَإِنَّ رِيحَهَا لَيُوجَدْ مَسِيرَةَ سَبْعِينَ عَامًا, that its fragrance can be experienced from a walking distance of 70 years. In another narration, a walking distance of 40 years. In another narration, it says kada wa kada, so a distance of this and that. So the question is, which one is it? Are they contradictory? So is it 40 years or 70 years? Or more? Which one is it? How can it be all of it?
At least more.
One of the interpretation is 70.
Your interpretation?
No. That they usually use 70 for the farthest, like the so long time, right?
What about the 40? Very specific, huh? So Ibn Hajar, he mentioned, he's like, there is no contradiction, right? In these narrations. So whether it's like, like 40 or 70 or 100, or another one like so and so. How do you combine it? And so he said, what it appears to me is that the 40 is the shortest distance you can smell the fragrance. Okay, is the shortest distance you can smell it. Now you can go beyond that, but that beyondness really differs from one person to another based on his iman. So a person with a strong iman and belief and reward, it is befitting that he smells it from further away, as opposed to a person who has less taqwa, less iman. It has to be a bit closer, but the closest is 40 years. It's still a pretty strong fragrance. Okay, but we should also be careful, because sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that some people will be punished by not smelling the fragrance of Jannah, which tells you how far away they're going to be from it. Okay? How far away they're going to be from it. So we have to be very careful about that. Okay? So we not to commit some of those sins. Alright, so I was hoping we'd finish the trees of Jannah.
We'll start 10 minutes later.
I wanted to be today later.
طيب, we're gonna stop because I don't want to skip it, because I want to talk about the description, about the leaves, about the shade, all these things.
Take as many questions as you can.
All right, so we'll stop here inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.